So as I exit my early 20s, I've started to realize that I'm going through what people call a quarter life crisis. I understand this isn't a unique or novel experience. Look at TikTok. There's, some young banker or lawyer or whatever. They quit their career, they go traveling, they start making content, they suddenly want a different life. Maybe they want to be a musician, for example. I used to see this as kind of cliche, and I guess I'm starting to realize that I understand how they feel. Obviously, my situation isn't exactly like that, but the feeling behind it is definitely very similar. At 18 or 19, you've just left high school. There's a fairly obvious script. You go to uni, you get your degree, you start your career, you maintain the friendships that you made throughout, your childhood, your teenage years, and university. You gain independence, you move out, you rent or you purchase a home if you're one of the fortunate ones. Maybe you meet the your life partner, you have a family, you get the point. Or at least you make steps towards these things occurring by your mid 20s. I'm approaching that age and I don't feel particularly settled at all. If anything, I feel more lost than ever. I guess a bit of backstory about myself to help you relate to me and understand where I'm coming from. I've always had a lot of interests, but when it came to university, I went to a relatively prestigious university and I have a law degree from there. I can't say that uni was exactly what I expected. On the social side of things, I made friends, of course, but looking back, I don't think that those friendships turned out to be, genuine or at least productive or beneficial to me. If anything, we just encourage each other's bad habits. A lot of toxic things happened, and I guess I can say I can learn from the situation. What I don't want around me, but I can't say that I came out of that situation completely for the better. Because once you leave uni, you lose your friendships usually, or you lose a lot of them, and you become more alone, or you feel more alone. That's definitely my experience. Losing friends is one thing. That's something that's happened to me throughout my life. Either me dropping them dropping me, or we just grow apart. But when it came to graduating and actually getting a job, reality slapped me hard in the face. When a graduate job application takes around 4 to 6 hours to complete on average, you lose interest and I guess resilience for the whole process. It's a CV that you got to tailor to the job description, write a cover letter. Maybe you have to answer commercial awareness questions like how AI is affecting the industry and what, I don't know, government policy of as of recent these are impacting their business model. And I can't say that I had no traction, but it took me a year of applying to eventually get something that wasn't even within my specific domain, the legal field in the first place. But okay, there's me. I'm a year out of uni. I've got my first corporate job. I thought things were going decently well for me. I didn't have the high flying, high paying job that a lot of my peers had, but I had something that I could build on, at least in my view. But to be honest, that experience of having that job was kind of miserable. Like, I wouldn't say it was depressing or it was particularly like upsetting or anything, but it just felt so fake. The thing is about the corporate world is that you need to go there with some type of mask. You got to filter your personality, conform to the way people speak to each other, the jokes they make, laugh at jokes that you don't even want to hear, and kind of put up with tedious, mundane tasks that just make you feel like you're losing your soul every single day. Whilst I didn't hate my job and my life there at this workplace, it became pretty evident to me that it wasn't really suitable for me in the long term. I didn't like conforming, and I appreciate that was just one workplace, but from my experience and seeing what other people say as well, corporate culture repeats itself with some variation in different workplaces, and that comes with a lot of bullshit. For example, something that surprised me that probably shouldn't have in hindsight was that people will leverage their professional position, their power over you, or abuse of the company's hierarchy, for example, just to actualize their dislike towards you and I guess make your life miserable or make it harder at the very least. And I experienced this firsthand with my manager, so allow me to paint the picture of the situation so you understand where I'm coming from. So, me and my manager, I think it's fair to say, were and probably still are very different people. You know, he presented himself as this like social, confident, charismatic ladies man who like knew the corporate game and how to play it. And me myself, you know, I'm not really that performative socially. I know how to speak to people, but I think that was like, you know, the fact I do mixed martial arts and I'm a bit more reserved probably just kind of highlighted the difference between me and him more than we otherwise were different. So I guess one of the situations that made me aware that this guy just had a problem with me was 6 weeks into my role. So me and the rest of the team, we go to a conference, and I guess my team's responsibility was to check in with the clients, make sure they're getting on okay at the conference and so forth. And in this, I had to shadow my manager and someone else separately as well, just to see how they'd speak to the clients. Now, listen, guys, I'm not a total idiot. I knew well enough to introduce myself and all those corporate professional pleasantries that happen when you meet someone new. But seeing as my manager had the report, the relationship with the client, I didn't really want to interject too much. So beyond introducing myself and maybe cracking a joke at a good time, I didn't really say much. Lo and behold, I was called in after that conference to learn and find out that my probation was extended. It was about my conduct or professional confidence or nervousness with clients. And I asked, okay, like this might be true, but can you please give an example to my manager? And he replied with word for word, after the conference, even for something as simple as waiting for a taxi, you were pacing around. And this just let me know, like, okay, this is not related to my work. This is just you having I guess, like some type of perception of me and qualifying it on your own assessment, saying like it's relevant to my job. And listen, I'm not here to like bitch about my manager, guys, but I'm just here to paint a picture that people who categorize you a certain way will make your life difficult just because they don't like you and they're going to bring in the personal into the professional, basically. Listen, guys, I'm not going to bitch about him too much because that would take away from the purpose of this video, but it was clear over the next year that there were many instances that showed that this guy just didn't like me for some reason. You know, with another guy, he ended up having his quarterly review with him in a literal bar, but with me, it ended up being some tense conversation about how I'm barely fulfilling the role that I'm in currently. And any mistakes I made were completely differently handled to how other people's mistakes were looked at. Anyway, after a year, I ended up getting fired, and I knew this guy had a part to play because in my last two quarterly reviews, which I found out after getting fired, by the way, they were the lowest marked that they could have been, despite me actually objectively achieving more for the company than I had in my first 6 months. And that was reflecting the fact that I actually got like a lot of bonus, a lot of commission payments, basically. Bonus payments, rather. And as the woman was calling me out to leave, she was like, he was like, sorry, he was like, oh, do you need me to come as well? Like bro was reveling in the fact that I was getting fired because he orchestrated half the fucking thing. So yeah, after getting fired, I found myself in a position of just being lost more than ever, to be honest. Back to square one, suddenly unemployed, having to return to those awful applications that take hours to complete. And I feel pretty much the same as I did 2 years ago when I left uni. But now that I've actually experienced the conventional corporate working world. And here's the thing, maybe I'm just flighty, maybe I've just got too many interests. Like from a young age, I engaged with video editing, making beats, playing a bit of chess. I got quite decent at that, and I guess for the last handful of years, mixed martial arts has been my main hobby and I love it. But I don't know what I want to do because, on one hand, I've got the law degree, you know, I've graduated from a prestigious uni, And I know it's possible for me to go get some high paying job or at least make steps towards it because some of my peers have done that. But on the other hand, I think my personality isn't really suitable for that, you know? Like if I can't even put on a mask in like a lower stakes, less rigid hierarchical corporate structure, then how am I going to do that when it comes to the legal field, being surrounded by like privileged twats all the time? I guess that leads to the other dilemma. You know, MMA isn't some fantasy I've just thought about and never engaged with. I've trained seriously and I've put a huge amount of time into it. You know, well over 1,000 hours at this stage. I've done my first competition quite recently, and I'm wanting to do a lot more, to be honest. And I'm going to continue doing that. Obviously, you're also watching me speak about my fucking life over Black Ops 2 gameplay. That shows, you know, I've already always had some creative interests. So the question isn't like, do I quit everything and become a YouTuber? The question is, what the fuck do I actually just do? You know? Because I got to be practical as well. And here's the thing, I can't pretend money doesn't matter. I want independence, but I also need an actual career or consistent income. But I also don't want to wake up at 30 or 35 or 40, spent my physical prime saying I'll take MMA seriously eventually. And obviously, guys, YouTube is uncertain as fuck. I don't expect this video to do well. So maybe I'm just fucking flighty, honestly. You know, maybe there's a much more simpler explanation for all this, and it's just that I can't choose. I've had loads of interest since I was young. Do I actually have these broad interests, or am I just looking for the next shiny new thing? Maybe this is the other end of that banker example I gave at the start. You know, they fantasize about having a lower stress, easier life. Maybe fantasizing about another life is just easier than living the boring parts of your current one. But then I think about the things I've committed to in my life. Obviously, you know, I spent a lot of time on my academic success. I got good grades, especially towards the latter part of like secondary school and university. And I've put in so many hours into MMA. I've lost a lot of weight, probably over 20 kilos from my peak, and I've still got a bit more to lose, honestly. But you know, I've dropped bad habits or vastly reduced them. And here's the thing, you know, at 18, when you first leave school, having loads of interest feels great because the possibilities are just endless, it seems. But 24, 25, 26, etc., 23 even, you start noticing opportunity cost. You know, you can't just abandon everything except the one thing you want to do, but you can't also simultaneously, you know, kill it in the corporate world, go train MMA and, you know, take it really seriously, do YouTube, have a huge social life, have relationships, go travel, save up for a house. You get the point. I start feeling the cost now more than ever, really. I guess that's the problem. You know, in your mid 20s, you start living one version of adulthood and you become much more conscious of the other life paths that you could have taken. So the truth is, I wish I had some, you know, philosophical insights to give you, but the truth is that I don't really know what I'm doing. I need to find work because I need to be practical, and then I need to continue MMA because I'd regret finding out not where I can take it. I make videos because I want to, I enjoy speaking, and maybe one of these things eventually becomes more important to me. Or maybe I just let life beat me down and kind of settle with something that I'm not happy with. I really hope I can avoid that, but I'm not sure that I can. I guess we're going to have to see. Right now, I'm just going to do my best, try to be a bit more practical and engage with the things that make me happy whilst building up a good life for myself. Thank you for listening, guys.